Hi, I'm Bill Patton with 720 Degree Coaching, and it's my distinct pleasure to have on the show the one and only Craig Webster, who is the master of infographics. I love his infographics. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to go over some of those, and then also Craig is going to teach us a little something about how to make those, because this is a great thing to learn how to do right about now. All right. Craig, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm pretty good here in South Africa. A little rainy this afternoon. It never rains in South Africa, but today it's rainy. And I'm just hoping that everybody does well and stays safe at the current situation in terms of the virus, and that we're all going to get through this pretty well.
Awesome. Awesome. So tell us a little bit about you. I mean, I know you're a kind of like the living legend and whatnot, but tell us a little bit about your coaching background and, you know. Yeah.
I'll keep it pretty quick. I started playing tennis really young, and my mom got me involved, and I was not really a very good player, although I played on an international level, and I played on the ATP tour before it was the ATP tour. So from 1970 to 1974, and then the ATP started. So, and quickly I learned that I wasn't really that good, so I wasn't going to make a living at tennis. And I was lucky that I got out of it in 75 and went to Miami and worked for a very famous guy called Gardner Malloy. You guys all know Gardner Malloy, and he taught me a whole lot about teaching and coaching. After that, I was lucky enough to work for Dennis van der Meer for a while. And after that, I got involved with my own academy in South Africa. It became very big, pretty famous, and I worked with all the top South African players. I was very fortunate in 83, 84 to be on the ATP tour with the guy called Robbie Fenter, who was number one at UCLA, number one in NCAAs. And a guy called Gary Muller, who's now very successful in Canada. And Christo von Rensburg is also in the States, one of my pupils.
Yeah, I remember Christo more than the other two, but
yeah. And we were on the ATP tour, and I was lucky that the then German National Women's Federation coach resigned and started his own academy in Spain, a guy called Mr. Hofsass. And I applied for the job through a friend of mine who you'll know, a guy called Nicky Pilic.
Okay.
And Nicky Pilic recommended me to the federation, and I got that job.
Oh, that's okay. Excellent summary. So
I think that's enough.
Craig's the real deal. Well, there you go. So I only have one question. Where was Dennis at the time when you connected with him?
Yeah, I was. I first met him in 1976 in Baltimore, the PCR course, and then 2 years later, I worked for him in Sweetbriar, in Virginia.
Okay. All right, good. So just in case people are wondering the timeline, I made my
to finish off with my career, I was lucky enough to work with 6 top 10 women players in the world. Which included Coda Kilch, who was 4, Bungie was 6, Eva Pfaff was about 8, and Hanneke was 9 or 10. And there was a young Steffi Graf who was, at the age of 16, was 24 in the world.
Okay, and then
like a Coco.
Everybody raise your hand if you had a crush on Bettina Bungie.
100%. Great girl.
Well, and you know, it's funny. It's funny to me to be connected with her on Facebook and to find out, you know, what a really fun person she is, and very, very intelligent and thoughtful.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really funny to have been a fan of someone and then now to be a friend with them. So it's very interesting time we're living in. So,
sure.
Scott Mitchell's giving me funny faces on it. So. All right, now, why don't we go right in? I'm going to share one of your infographics on the screen on YouTube. And so Instagram people, tough luck, you don't get to see it. But Facebook people, you get to see it, not such a great format. But I definitely recommend that you go to my YouTube where you're going to be able to see this a lot better. All right, I'm going to put one up on the screen here. Then we're going to talk about that.
Sure.
And then people will see what I mean when they realize how I love these things. All right, so totally jam-packed with information. So, all right. So why don't you kind of walk us through this psychological characteristics of a great tennis champion?
Yeah, I think most of the graphics that I do, Bill, is to try and keep it really simple. I'm not trying to turn it into a long, complicated lesson. It's a snapshot of information that is really pertinent to that specific target or that specific subject that I'm discussing. So that's the first thing. Not all the information that is available is in this particular shot, because there's just not the size or the space.
Okay, and so let's stop there for a second, because I want to comment on that, because that is so wise, right? I mean, we want to start with basics and manageable information and give a basis, and then but not overwhelm people, right? I mean, because overwhelming information then creates paralysis by analysis.
Correct.
Okay, so let's keep going then. Why don't you? A great background. Let's keep going.
Yeah. So this particular one is really targeted at young players that are emerging and going to or playing in the first division college tennis, playing on the ITF Junior Tour, and are probably in the top 50 in the world or top 100 in the world, or for parents and coaches that are looking and saying, well, what characteristics am I going to really teach my student or my pupils? Am I going to give them this kind of information? And I think a lot of coaches miss the opportunity to give them and work on these 5 specifics.
Well, and I'll take it a little further too, because I know for sure that this is applicable to a wide range of players. I mean, I teach my kids to control their thinking.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's important, but it's even more important to someone who's going to succeed at a high level. You really need to master all of these. All right.
Exactly.
Flesh out what you mean by control your thinking.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Are you there?
Okay, good. I'm there, right? I'm here, right with you.
Okay, excellent. So why don't you flesh out what you mean by control over your thinking?
Well, what we're really trying to do there is that very often the player starts the match and goes onto the court, their preparation's being good, and they start a match, and all of a sudden things are going not so well. They lose their first serve, they 3-love down because of losing the first serve before they know it. Like you've experienced, I mean, a match can go by in the blink of an eye. And so therefore what happens is they start to think negatively. They're unable to control their thoughts and stay in the match or stay competitive in the point, even getting down to the point, and then starting to win 1 point at a time, holding serve or breaking serve with a couple of good returns. So if they can't do that, they start to concentrate on the negative. I'm going to lose this match. I'm not playing well. Suddenly I can't hit the ball great. I'm hitting the ball too short. They don't even think about hitting the ball too short. The ball is just landing in the service box. So they're not in control of their thought process.
Right. And so, all right. And so now let's move into the controlling your emotions, right? I'm thinking there must be a connection, right?
Yeah, exactly. So then what happens is that with regards to their emotions, if they're not emotionally mature, they really struggle, and they're down and they start to get emotional. Either there's anger or there's frustration, and these lead to negativity, and they're unable to stay in control of those emotions. And then once, you know what happens once that happens for most people, there are a few. There are a couple. McEnroe, as you know, you probably know him pretty much better than I do. Although first time I met him was at the Orange Bowl in '76. He won the Orange Bowl. But he was a junior. He's in college, and but he was a guy that could lose his temper and yet start to play well. But I would say that out of my experience over 30, 40 years, most people that lose their temper end up playing poorly.
Yeah, I mean, anger is an interesting thing. So one little housekeeping item. If you could steady your phone, that would be terrific. Because
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like good. Now I'm not on an ocean line.
Yeah, that's better.
I'm like
sure.
Dramamine. But thank you. Now here's I think an interesting example, and tell me what you make of this. All right, Federer's playing Agassi in that quarterfinal, right? Where Agassi is up with split sets and Agassi up break, and he looks like he's going to win the third set. And they have a 25-shot rally won by Agassi with a fantastic shot, and the crowd is roaring. And Federer, and I don't think anybody saw this, Federer gave like a Klingon death anger, right? And nobody saw it. I think a lot of people missed that. And he was angry. He was furious, right? And then what did he do? He went and he won 11 of the next 13 games. I think he won like 24 of the next 28 points, something like that. So explain that in terms of like the anger thing.
Well, yeah, I think, Federer, we're talking about really, well,
I think you might have your hand over the microphone.
How's that? Better?
There we go. All right.
Okay, so sorry about that. And I think Roger, he's just was such a great athlete, and he really had the ability, although we knew that as an upcoming junior, he had a bad temper. But he learned to control it, and ultimately he was able to create and improve that intensity. Because if you look at the last block on the graphic, it's saying that one should really be looking at being able to manipulate their levels of intensity.
All right, and so let's go back to the graphic here for a second.
Does that help you?
No, that's really good. So, but I'm going to want to put the graphic back up there for people to see.
Yeah.
Okay. So controlling your emotions, and then so there's a connection between controlling your emotions and control over your intensity. Absolutely, exactly. Right?
Very much.
So, is there more to say about emotions, or should we move on?
No, I think emotions. There's Borg, who I know really pretty well, not name dropping or anything like that, but he was just he never expressed any. And Chris Evert was brilliant at hiding or keeping those emotions inside, and able to play exceptionally well. Nastasi was a great player, but he showed every emotion. So it's about being the balance of that.
Yes, and one might say that perhaps Nastasi may have had some slightly better results if he had been a little bit more under control.
True.
But on the other side, I'm a believer that if you're a passionate person, sometimes you need to express your passion.
Very much so. Very much so. So so then being able to control your motivation is also then linked to that intensity. So if you're unable to stay motivated in the match, then you really do have a big problem. So you have to believe, you have to stay motivated, you have to keep trying, chasing down a lot of balls, even at the high level. Even though you might be winning a match, you have to be able to you get yourself into a tight jam when you're 15-40 down, or you're on a key point or a key game where you can be playing, or in the tiebreaker where 1 point can change that set and change the match. So you have to stay motivated in tennis all the time until the last point.
Yes, and I mean, like if you look at like a Jimmy Connors and a Rafa Nadal who play every point like it's match.
Exactly. Unbelievable.
Yeah. So, all right. And it's funny, that's how I always tried to play,
Yeah, right.
was 100% intensity. It didn't always happen, but all right, let's go back to, so let's talk about concentration. So what happens when you have a break in concentration?
Invariably, the concentration at all levels, once you lose that concentration, your mind starts to drift and you start to wander and stop thinking about the ball or your tactical intent or your reading of the incoming ball. Those are the two common mistakes. Tactical intent, now you can discuss that and say, well, explain that in more detail. Shot selection becomes the next process. But if you select the wrong shot, you start to make unforced errors, even though you're ahead and you're winning. So it's very, very important to stay concentrated. And to do that is really to keep yourself in. I find the best way I'd work with my student is to keeping their attention inside the court. And that's a lesson on its own.
Yeah. I like to say, keep your arms and legs and your eyes inside the ride at all times. Right?
I like that.
The only thing that matters is what's happening on court 3 right now. You might be interested in court 2 or court 4, but you're not currently playing there. So
exactly.
Yeah. All right. Exactly. So now let's move on to the next one here. I'll put that up again for a moment. So we're kind of going in and out of that.
No problem.
All right. And so now we're at control your intensity.
Yeah. So the ability to control the intensity is, we know that they're in match play, even at most levels, especially at the higher level where I'm more experienced and like to work. The players are all hitting the ball great, but there's a switch in momentum. And that switch in momentum invariably involves one of the players losing some concentration and making some bad strategical decisions. And then if they're in that situation, they have to raise their intensity. They have to raise their level. So intensity is a form of motivation, but it's also a form of intelligence, and it's a form of changing the way you play. The old adage you used to hear about was, you always change a losing game. You don't change that winning game. So it's that's where the intensity side of it comes.
Got it. Now, is it possible for people to be too intense?
Yeah, I think there are times where too much over intensity or too much intensity for the level of maturity of the player leads to the choking. So that's where the guy even a good player starts to get tight. They tighten up on their serve. They serve more double faults, or they missing returns, second serve returns they're missing, and they're just through tightness. And that's over intensity. I would agree with you there. Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
Good question.
It reminds me of Rainer Martins, who did a landmark study in 1970, where he split out physical intensity, right, with the anxiety in your body with the anxiety in your mind, right? So you want to be incredibly confident and have very few worries and be very much at the top of that, but we have to be somewhere in the midpoint of intensity. Mm-hmm. Overly intense is going to be tight. Not intense enough is going to be...
Intense enough is just too lackadaisical.
Yes. Yeah. So finding that peak for the individual, I think, is really important.
Balance.
So let's now get in. Okay, now we're going to have a little commercial the commercial break here. So right here, let's see if I can get it on screen.
No problem.
This show is brought to you by Spec Tennis, right? So Nate Gross just sent me these, and if you're a pro and you're in lockdown, you really need to get a hold of some of these. This is a Spec Tennis paddle from Nate Gross. He's a NorCal guy like me, and you can use tennis strokes with this, and use it with an orange ball. I was out in the street playing with my son with this yesterday, and it was a blast. So anyway, there's a little commercial for that. Now, before we go on to your other infomercial and your other infographics, which are amazing, because we've got 2 more to go over, let's get into how to make them. Because, you know, one thing that it's been a theme for me in interviews is helping pros to get new skills that they can use to, you know, improve their programs. I mean, honestly, you're great, and I knew of you peripherally, but when you started putting these out, I was like, I need to know who Craig Webster is. Who is this guy?
Thank you.
Because, you know, these things are amazing. And then, you know, you're not a spring chicken either. So you're like,
not at all.
This man is a spring chicken, and he's right there on the cutting edge of all the good stuff. So if you're younger than Craig, shame on you if you don't do this stuff. Anyway, enough. Okay, yes. The shaming is over now. But now, is there a program that you use? How do you do this?
Bill, a simple way is to get a product called Picolage. It's a free app. You can go into your apps and search, and you can look up Picolage and download that app. And that's a free template that enables you to insert graphics, photos, and just general information in a format that you want. So you can drop in the logo, you can create a lesson program, you can create a report on a pupil, you can create a bio on somebody, on a student.
So, okay, how do you spell that? P-I-C?
P-I-C-C-O-L-L-A-G-E, Picolage. P-I-C, 2 C's, 2 L's.
A-L-O-D-G-E?
Picolage.
Picolage, that's an interesting name. All right, so there it is. I put it in the chat. Picolage. Yeah. All right. You know, and as we hang up here, I'm going to get that, and I'm going to make an infographic better than Craig's.
Thank you. And then also, Bill, it's free. So this is a free app. There's no fees. There's no subscriptions. It's a free app. Then what I've done is I've managed to find a thing called PicMaker.
Okay.
P-I-C Maker. And that is software whereby you can alter and manipulate a photograph.
Okay.
So you can get a photograph of Pancho Gonzalez or Steffi Graf or Bettina or Coda Kilsch or whoever, and you can manipulate the background. You can insert a different background. You can add I use a lot of plain backgrounds, either white or black. And then you insert that into that template, that Picolage template. And Picolage will take you directly to Instagram, and it'll take you directly to Twitter. It'll take you directly to Facebook, and you can post.
Wow. Old dog, new tricks.
And yeah, it's very simple. This is not so my product or my graphics are not online. This is not an online business that I'm selling lessons. These are lessons I'm creating out of interest and love and passion for the game, for beginners, for adults, for parents, for coaches, for players of all levels.
Yeah, that's great. And I really appreciate it. Thank you, Craig Webster, for that. I mean, just for sharing them, but then also now to share your resource. No, it's because it's a great thing for the game. And, your generosity of effort, I think, is
Thank you, sir.
come back on.
Appreciate it.
Going to go out into everybody else, and let's keep kind of paying it forward.
Sure.
Webster. All right, so let's move on to the next infographic. Is that all right?
Sure.
All right, so here we go. We're going to go, wait, photos. Boom, boom. And there we are. Fundamental lesson, right? So we're talking about spin here. And
yep.
And so there you have it. We just got done talking about the pictures, and then there they are.
Yeah. So you can see, Bill, what I've done is I've put my photograph in the top left corner, my logo, my brand, Webster Tennis, and then I've inserted the storyline. I've cropped the players. I've got Steffi there for a slice backhand, Dion and Nadal for their topspin, and it's a very simple, fundamental lesson that a young player would have to obtain and learn to become a better player.
Okay, I only have one criticism of this graphic, Craig.
Sure, you can.
Yellow. So, so if somebody were to actually hit a ball on that yellow line, then it's going to be really hard to make the call.
Okay. I like it very much. I love that sense of humor.
Nobody escaped. Nobody escaped the Bill Patton.
I can't get away from that, huh?
No. This is the price you pay for coming on. So let's go back to that graphic again for a moment. So walk us through this again. All right.
So there we're saying that the needs for the spin, the reasons for learning the spin or a tactical advantage, how to impart the spin in terms of the top spin and the slice. Simplistically, this is not in detail. This is not getting the angle of the racket or the racket head above the wrist or the racket at 45 degrees or 60 degrees or whatever. This is not teaching you to use backspin to play a drop shot. This is just the basic fundamental information that a player would, I need to spin the ball and I want to learn more about how to spin the ball. So then the student should ask their pro, or they should look at some stuff on YouTube or your stuff. And
right. Well, and the thing I love about that one right there is you're showing, okay, here are these legendary champions doing different things, having different aspects to their game. So then we're using the power of their good example, right, to teach the lesson, rather than it's because Craig said.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right, let's get on to the third one and see. I mean, and it's funny because there's so much that can be taught just from that. It's visually compelling, so it makes you want to look at it. I have yet to feel like I couldn't keep looking at a Craig Webster infographic. And now trying to make up for the fact that I've been so mean to Craig already by, throwing in a few compliments. So anyway, detailed information with regards to planning your tennis time. So let's start with, so this one is obviously more detailed. And I mean, I'm like this, and I'm like, wow, I could look at that for 15 minutes to digest that. So, so where do we begin on that?
Well, that one is really trying to give a little bit of information. It's also simplistic information regarding periodization into young players on the tour, or again, ITF junior players that have got a full year's program, how they're working with a full-time. What are they doing? How are they planning their work? How they're going to get involved in the year's work, the micro work, the macro work, down into the session, down into a lesson, and knowing exactly what they're going to do to achieve the goals that they've set up for themselves. So it could be a ranking improvement, It could be a technical improvement. It could be a physiological or a movement improvement. It could be a mental improvement that we discussed earlier. So
yeah, and like for instance, what a lot of times what I like to do is try to refine players' technique in the fall after the summer. Junior tennis in the U.S. right after the heavy summer season is done. Then in the fall we get back to working on technique again. And in through the holidays, and then maybe the early part of January. But then once we get into February, it's about time to start getting, training to perform, and
exactly.
putting those new techniques to use, so that they'll be ready for the following summer. So, what are some of the big picture items that people can also take from that?
Yeah, so I think the big thing is to start out with a whiteboard or a piece of a sheet of paper, or a whiteboard is good, and then say, well, it's 2020, and this year's a pretty unusual one, so we won't talk too much about 2020 right now. But generally, you guys know what's happening in the States. You have your fall, you have your summer vacation or summer camp. So you would slot in those periods of time by month, by week, and you would say, well, what do we want to achieve? When are you going to go and play in Kalamazoo? I don't know, does Kalamazoo still exist?
Yes, it does.
Tournament? It does. Okay. Well, yeah, and then we know you've got the Orange Bowl and you've got Eddie Herr. So at the end of the year, and you plan and you start to prepare the player in a much more professional manner, a much more scientific approach to their training, a much more specific approach to their lesson even, because, also being in this game such a long time, a lesson can become just mundane. A lesson can just become another lesson week in and week out. Suddenly, so what's new? What's exciting? What's interesting? And I think that's really critical in terms of the player development.
Absolutely. Now, and also to apply this to groups, you might have, a macro cycle and a mesocycle.
Yeah.
One thing that I find happens is you might have a player who is not responding as well to the intensity of the training. So for the short term, they might have to go on a micro cycle. Or, I had a case where, I had my high school season, pretty much periodized out, but then my top player had an injury. So he had this very mild groin injury. So then I had to, I kind of had to go micro and pull him aside and go, all right, you don't participate in spider run. You're not sprinting. You're not doing any of this other stuff that will push you over the top. So what are some other issues that come up when training groups, and how you might have the group on a macro or a meso, but then the people are on micros?
Yeah, I find if you're working in groups of between 8 and 12 or even 16, slightly larger groups, even up to a group of, let's say, 30 players, which I've had to do over the last year or so. That's a lot of work for one coach. So hopefully you've got one or two assistants to assist you, especially on the spread of the court. But it's really it's about activity, keeping the activity flow good, seeing that there's not too much downtime, and yet the rest period is also good enough where there's some recovery. But you really just want to be careful, that the group is well managed, well structured. I think it's really critical to also give your students, especially in a group scenario, a pre-warning of what the lesson entails. So,
Yeah.
or the
You're
group session is going to entail.
Yeah, you're starting to cut your head. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Okay, I'm back. I'm back live. I haven't disappeared.
He was. Yeah.
Sorry,
He was
I'm still here.
He's slowly sliding off the couch there. All right.
Yeah,
Let's
sorry. Yeah.
Let's get back to the graphic and bring our attention to one or two or more subtleties of this. Where do people go wrong and maybe they don't realize it?
You go to point 7. Yeah. If we go to point 7,
Yeah.
and you can see that we're talking about drills, points, sets, technical and tactical correction and improvements. So that's pretty intense, and that needs to be spelt out. So are you building your players' ability to rally effectively? Are you drilling your players to play the point specifically well? Where are the key games or points in a set? Some of the nice ways of doing that is to alter the score. So if the guy is stronger than the other player, you say, well, you're starting out at -30, for every game. And that's a nice way to play the sets and the points.
Mm-hmm.
So that type of detail. If it's shot or technical correction, within a group, there's really a lot of work on your hand and on your plate to be getting everybody to improve something in their technique. Is it the contact point? Is it their ability to direct the ball and control the ball? I found a lot of juniors, they're unable to really control the ball and direct the ball really very, very well. So those are things that one would want to do down on point 7, even in a group scenario.
So this would be a good time to say play a game with special rules, like, okay, I'm gonna hit you a short ball and you must come to the net to play this point. Then play that out. Okay. Or we're going to play a game where every server starts down 30-40.
Exactly that.
One of my favorites is a pressure set, and it's the one where if you get to game point, you must win that point or you lose all your points.
Ah, nice one. I love it.
It's excruciating. It's excruciating. So, you might, if you're 40 love and you don't win that point, now you start the game over love all, right?
Yeah.
If 40-30 you lose that point, then you're now love 30.
Yeah.
But the same thing's true of the returner if the returner does it. Now, one thing that I do to make it not go on forever and ever and ever with newer players is each player gets an opportunity to win a game point, and if they both fail, then that game just ends with no winner.
Ah, nice, very good.
Brand of torture. So, what are some other things, some other tricks that you have up your sleeve to teach specific things mentally or tactically?
I think the things that I like to really look at when I'm looking, I think one of my next posts are going to be around some advice for parents and coaches on what to look for when a new player comes to you, and how do you assess them, the assessing aspect of their game. So do you look at so describe footwork. Yeah, they're really good athletes, they move well. Or, wow, these are tall, lanky guys and 6'5", and the guy doesn't bend too well. So one of my next ones is to kind of give a parent specific or coach specific an ability to assess their player, and then to build a program around that player, and to try to customize each individual player's skill sets, strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities. So take that information, because in group scenarios, what often happens is that the good player gets more of your attention than the weaker player. and then the weaker player doesn't really know how to get better, and so he feels a little lost in the group. Whereas in actual fact, you could then realize that and then start to give the weaker player more attention to bring him up to speed, and you neglect your best player. So there's a lot of psychology, as you know, into how to manage a group scenario and a group lesson. It's critical.
Well, and I'll throw this in there too, is no matter what you do and no matter how hard you try to give equal attention, somebody will perceive that you're not.
Exactly.
Be ready to be shocked by how someone feels like you're not paying attention to them.
Exactly.
But, you know, and it's only natural for us to gravitate to the better players or the players who have more personal, engaging charm. So yeah, I mean, we need to go out of our way to check ourselves and make sure that we're paying enough attention to people. I think it's a good idea to go to the players and go and say, am I paying enough attention to you?
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
some players really want, hold on, my Facebook went off for a second. Some players really want lots of attention, and some can function without a lot.
Yeah. I share a little story with you for half a minute.
Yeah, do it. Take as long as you want.
So the first time I'm now appointed as the German national women's tennis coach, 1984. And it's my first individual session with Steffi Graf. Steffi Graf is 16 years old. She's already ranked number 24 in the world. We get on the court. We're at a tournament in the UK, at a tournament in Beckenham, in Kent. It's a pre-Wimbledon tournament. So we get on the court. I say, hey, morning, Steffi. How are you? You slept well? Da-da-da. This is what I want you to do today. She says, whoa, coach, for 1 hour, don't talk to me. Don't tell me anything. This is this young German girl. She says, don't talk to me. I know exactly what I want to do for the first hour. After 1 hour, you stop me. We talk, we stop, we criticize, we discuss what I've achieved, what I haven't achieved. How is that for my introduction?
Well, hello. Well, and so, and that is really amazing, sort of the mindset of these great champions and how intrinsically motivated they are.
Sure.
Have you ever seen the video of Venus and Serena being interviewed when Venus was 15 and Serena was 12? Okay, well, they asked Venus and Serena, who do you want to be like when you grow up? And Venus said Billie Jean King, and Serena said, nobody. I want everyone to want to be like me. And it's like, exactly. I don't know that Richard told her to say that. I don't think he did.
I don't think so.
So, but isn't that interesting, that mindset that's just a completely different place?
Sure. But I think for me,
you're a little fuzzy on your mind.
Yeah. What you asked me to discuss, Bill, was some of the key things for me. For me, it's really around about your use of your reading the ball, your use of your eyes. Reading the incoming ball is very critical for me. And that really prepares you to be ready for every shot if you can read the ball really well. I think that's good. The second thing is to have a really good maturity in your mental capacity is really important. So if a player is really well,
we're having a little moment where Craig is frozen. Craig, I don't know if you can hear me, but you're frozen on my screen, and you've been frozen for a moment. Maybe you can get closer to your internet. So we're waiting. Uncomfortable moments with a frozen face on the screen. So Craig, maybe you can go out and come in again or get closer to your Wi-Fi modem. I don't know if you even hear me. I'm going to give it about another 30 seconds. And if Craig doesn't get unfrozen, then we're going to call it a wrap. And it's too bad because he was really making a nice summary right there. But 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Can I do this? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Sorry, folks. It ends with a splat rather than with a triumphant ending. All right. I got to end this.